Welcome everyone to the next episode in our Night Springs series. If you are new, I recommend pausing and watching both the introduction and overlap videos which break down the nature of the TV show before proceeding further. While in the Dark Place, Alan worked on a new set of episodes designed to be a vehicle of escape. In doing so, he collaborated with another in the process. I'll turn it over to this new host for introductions. Enjoy.
A fan. The dictionary definition of the word is an enthusiast, a fervent devotee, an abbreviation of fanatic. What comes across to an outsider as a dangerous obsession or even madness is something entirely different from the point of view of the fan herself. To be a fan is a joyous existence, one filled with the happiness that stems from knowing with utter clarity purpose of your life. But what if that purpose could be more still? If you could be lifted out of the flock as your idol's chosen one, the only one who could decipher his secret messages. What lengths would you go to save the object of your obsession in Night Springs?
The relationship between fan and art is a thin threshold, at least in Night Springs. But it is not the only thin wall we see here. Characters and events between the episodes and reality echo. A two-way street of information passing back and forth. As we will see, number one fan may have influenced things outside the confines of the episode. It begins with the character of the Waitress. It should be stated that despite appearances, this is not Rose, only a variant of hers that exists on the Sea of Night. Bright's Diner has been reflected as Night's Diner, an establishment that she owns and operates. Many more twisted reflections appear throughout this episode, namely the name of the waitress's object of obsession. While in real life, Alan wrote of an Alex Casey, and in another universe this character was known as Max Payne, here he is known as Will Hurt. The play on words between pain and hurt is obvious. But these are not the only echoes here. Alan based many things on his knowledge of the real world. Many of the questions this episode brings up is how the waitress's story connects to Rose. Wake is fully aware of Rose's obsession. Rather than write about her though, the tone of the episode feels like what he would expect her to write, what he imagines Rose would create if she did a self-insert fanfiction. As a result, it is definitely over the top. In the Prime universe, we do see examples of Rose's fanfiction. Reading between the lines of her work and number one fan, there are startling echoes. Three primary parts of this Night Springs episode find their way into reality. The Mary Sue character archetype being torn between two aspects of Alan and secret messages from the writer. A large part of this episode's humor comes from the self-awareness that this episode reads like a poorly written fanfiction. The waitress is amazing at everything she does. Running the diner, saving orphans from a bear attack using yoga, running a bird sanctuary that is curing bird lupus, running a fan site that is voted number one in the world, and being a shotgun-wielding defender of the town. In her real-life fanfiction, she is the world's top mycologist, gardener, engages in fiber crafts, and also a proficient firearm enthusiast. Based upon his ability to be borderline omniscient while in the Dark Place, it is likely that Alan knew of her fanfictions and mimicked her style, specifically her being amazing at everything she attempts. The next comparison is the focus on the two Allans. In her own fanfictions, we see acceptance of both of these aspects, the sensitive writer and the rugged soldier. One she has known since childhood, the other she only just met a day before, a man who helped her fight off the zombie horde. This is in clear contrast to the Night Springs episode. There, we have the writer, but the double is the bad boy, a negative doppelganger that the waitress vocally is against and rejects until the very end. This is the first time we see a clear difference between Rose's fanfictions and number one fan. Rose's story ends with her trying to decide which of the two she wants to be with. The Waitress, on the other hand, only wants the writer and has a largely antagonistic relationship with the bad boy until she tries to save him by the end. So why are these characterizations different? I guess that really comes down to which came first, the fanfiction or the episode. While questioning timelines in The Dark Place feels kind of pointless, it is relevant in this case. You see, if Rose's fanfictions came first, then it would mean Alan writes his story in response. Rose's fanfic gives equal value to the writer and his doppelganger, the imaginations of a woman who could choose either of them as her companion. But if we translate this in terms of Alan Wake and Mr. Scratch, is this a good idea? Scratch isn't a thing that should be considered exciting in this context, not something given that kind of power. Leaving the decision up in the air about which of the two will be chosen casts ripples that can turn out for the worst. This may feel like much ado about nothing. Who cares if Rose's girlish imaginations ended with a pseudo-dating simulator? The problem is, Cauldron Lake does not know the difference. While this is pure speculation, it is possible that in his omniscient state, Alan witnessed her little fanfics. Upon adapting them into his own story, he recognized that if taken the wrong way, the story could be problematic for his chances in return. So he made a crucial change. The Waitress clearly picks the writer and rejects the bad boy. In doing so, he changed the story to make it clear that Scratch is negative and not something to be desired. The Waitress eventually accepts him as a person, but not in a romantic way. Much like one must accept our own negative aspects, but choose not to let it run wild in our day-to-day lives. We see this show up symbolically in the boss fight against the bad boy. Werewolves have always been a metaphor for the inner darkness consuming the conscious personality in literature. But more than this, it is represented by the imagery of the black wolf and the white wolf. The old proverb is, "There's a battle of two wolves inside us all. One is evil. It is anger, jealousy, greed, resentment, lies, inferiority, and ego. The other is good. It is joy, peace, love, hope, humility, kindness, empathy, and truth. The wolf that wins, the one you feed." In her own writings, Rose fed both wolves. In Number One Fan, Alan corrected the record and only fed the white wolf. This may seem like a minor shot across the bow, but it is possibly a single skirmish in the larger war that is the Return manuscript. This episode of Night Springs is largely seen as an escape attempt by Alan that failed. While this is certainly true, we must acknowledge the possibility that other goals are being accomplished here, one of which is weakening Mr. Scratch's influence. The other episodes may have similar side goals, which we will explore when the time is right. The final part of this episode that we see cross over into reality is the secret messages the Waitress was receiving. The singing fish on the wall, the deer speaking with the voice of a man, paragraphs in a book changing to be a direct message to her. These are the kind of odd occurrences that Rose actually experienced. Secret messages for her in the clouds and the newspaper, anonymous posts on her fan site, seeing visions in puddles just like her fanfiction self saw her writer's face in the water. These messages in reality largely focus on the coming conflict, how to handle the Taken, secret instructions, but also include innocuous things like baking recipes. There is a wrinkle though. Rose believes these are all messages from Alan, but he claims otherwise. Considering his memory issues in Initiation, it is likely he simply forgot. But there are other possibilities. The most prevalent of theories I have seen is that Alice is the one actually speaking to her, making use of the fangirl to aid her distressed husband. In this way, it would be the same situation when Cynthia Weaver believed she was receiving messages from Tom the Poet. In retrospect, we know that it was the bright presence wearing the skin of Tom that was sending her messages. While I haven't settled my own thoughts on this theory, I have heard some say that Alice has taken on the role of the bright presence within the confines of Return's story, an external force that guides the hero forward. Whether the actual bright presence is involved or this is simply a thematic overlay is not yet clear. While watching Number One Fan, the events within the episode is less relevant than how it affects reality, what echoes there are that stem from Night Springs. These are the important factors considering they were done intentionally by Alan to serve a purpose. I could almost make the argument that he was more interested in these side quests than actually accomplishing the goal of using it as a vehicle for escape. By the end of the episode, we see that this story of a trapped writer being rescued by his biggest fan was never going to work. So many details were changed from how it really is. As a result, their overlap on a narrative Venn diagram is minimal. Firstly, it removes Alan's marriage from the picture entirely. The characterization of Rose from a fangirl who accepts the boundaries of his marriage to the waitress who actively pursues him is changed. It diminishes the violent evil of Mr. Scratch and turns him into a petty caricature of an antagonist. So by the time the waitress arrives in the writer's room to rescue him, the episode ends instead of continuing on into reality. If the point of this Night Springs episode was truly to escape, Wake did a poor job of crafting it, which is why I find it more likely that the purpose was twofold: weaken Mr. Scratch in what little way he could, but also prepare Rose for what she needed to do in return, creating a way to send her messages so that when the time was right, she could aid both Saga and himself in surviving the horror story.
A fan and the object of her joy come together against a world trying to keep them apart. A happy ending for some. But is happiness, like beauty, all in the eye of the beholder? Where is the line between fandom and fixation? One can never tell in Night Springs.
Thank you all for watching. If you enjoyed, please drop a like and subscribe to receive updates on future uploads. If you would like to help support the channel, a Patreon has been set up and the link is in the description below. Have a great day and peace be with you all.